We are now ready to tackle Dickens. We are now ready to embrace Dickens. We are now ready to bask in Dickens. In our dealings with Jane Austen, we had to make a certain effort in order to join the ladies in the drawing room. In the case of Dickens, we remain at table with our tawny port. We had to find an approach to Jane Austen and her Mansfield Park. I think we did find it and did have some degree of fun with her delicate patterns, with her collection of eggshells in cotton wool. But the fun was forced. We had to slip into a certain mood. We had to focus our eyes in a certain way. Personally, I dislike porcelain and the minor arts, but I have often forced myself to see some bit of precious translucent china through the eyes of an expert, and have discovered a vicarious bliss in the process. Let us not forget that there are people who have devoted to Jane all their lives, their ivy clad lives. I am sure that some readers have a better ear for Miss Austen than I have. However, I have tried to be very objective. My objective method was, among other ways, an approach through the prism of the culture that her young ladies and gentlemen had imbibed from the cool fountainhead of the 18th and young 19th centuries. We also followed Jane in her somewhat spidery manner of composition. I want to remind the reader of the central part that a rehearsal plays in the web of Mansfield Park. With Dickens, we expand. It seems to me that Jane Austen's fiction had been a charming rearrangement of old fashioned values. In the case of Dickens, the values are new. Modern authors still get drunk on his vintage. Here, there is no problem of approach as with Jane Austen, no courtship, no dilly dallying. We just surrender ourselves to Dickens' voice. That is all. If it were possible, I would like to devote the 50 minutes of every class meeting to mute meditation, concentration, and admiration of Dickens. However, my job is to direct and rationalize those meditations, that admiration. All we have to do when reading Bleak House is to relax and let our spines take over. Although we read with our minds, the seat of artistic delight is between the shoulder blades. That little shiver behind is quite certainly the highest form of emotion that humanity has attained when evolving pure art and pure science. Let us worship the spine and its tingle. Let us be proud of our being vertebrates, for we are vertebrates tipped at the head with a divine flame. The brain only continues the spine, the wick really goes through the whole length of the candle. If we are not capable of enjoying that shiver, if we cannot enjoy literature, then let us give up the whole thing and concentrate on our comics, our videos, our books of the week. But I think Dickens will prove stronger. In discussing Bleak House, we shall soon notice that the romantic plot of the novel is an illusion and is not of much artistic importance. There are better things in the book than the sad case of Lady Dedlock. We shall need some information about lawsuits in England, but otherwise it is going to be all play. At first blush, it might seem that Bleak House is a satire. Let us see. If a satire is of little aesthetic value, it does not attain its object, however worthy that object may be. On the other hand, if a satire is permeated by artistic genius, then its object is of little importance and vanishes with its times, while the dazzling satire remains for all time as a work of art. So why speak of satire at all? The study of the sociological or political impact of literature has to be devised mainly for those who are by temperament or education immune to the aesthetic vibrancy of authentic literature, for those who do not experience the telltale tingle between the shoulder blades. I repeat again and again, it is no use reading a book at all if you do not read it with your back. It may be all right to contend that Dickens was eager to castigate the iniquities of Chancery. Such cases as that of Jarndyce did occur now and then in the middle of the last century, although, as legal historians have shown, the bulk of our author's information on legal matters goes back to the 1820s and 1830s, so that many of his targets had ceased to exist by the time Bleak House was written. But if the target is gone, let us enjoy the carved beauty of his weapon. Again, as an indictment of the aristocracy, the description of the deadlocks and their set is of no interest or importance whatsoever, since our author's knowledge and notions of that set are extremely meagre and crude. But as artistic achievements, the deadlocks, I am sorry to say, are as dead as door nails or door locks. The deadlocks are dead. So let us be thankful for the web and ignore the spider. Let us admire the structural qualities of the crime theme and ignore the weakness of the satire and its theatrical gestures. Finally, the sociologist may write a whole book, if he please, on the abuses that children underwent at a period of time that the historian will call the murky dawn of the industrial age, child labor and all that. But to be quite frank, the link of these poor children in Bleak House is not so much with social circumstances of the 1850s as with earlier times and mirrors of time. From the point of view of literary technique, the connection is, rather, with the children of previous novels, the sentimental novel of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. One should read again the pages of Mansfield Park on the Price family in Portsmouth and see for oneself the quite definite artistic pedigree, the quite definite connection between Miss Austen's poor children and the poor children of Bleak House. And there are other literary sources, of course. So much for the technique. Now, from the emotional point of view, here again we are hardly in the 1850s at all. We are with Dickens in his own childhood, and so once more the historical frame breaks down. As is quite clear, the enchanter interests me more than the yarn spinner or the teacher. In the case of Dickens, this attitude seems to me to be the only way of keeping Dickens alive, above the reformer, above the penny novelette, above the sentimental trash, above the theatrical nonsense. There he shines forever on the heights of which we know the exact elevation, the outlines and the formation, the mountain trails to get there, through the fog. It is in his imagery that he is great.